Yeah, hi, this is Luke Hataruza. What does it mean to wake up? Many people have different terms such as enlightenment, awakening, new awareness, conscious awareness, so on and so on. Well, to make this point clear, Dr. Eva and I had a chat with Colin Drake, who has been on our show and shares his interpretation that has served him and those that he helped to wake up to experiencing who they truly are, and in so doing, get to live a satisfying life. Here is Colin Drake.
Yeah, hi, this is Luke Hataruza. This week's episode of Living a Satisfying Life, we're interviewing Colin Drake. Dr. Eva Ritvo and I had an opportunity to chat with him once again. And if you remember, he was here once before. And we're discussing a topic that lots of people have some trouble with sometimes, and that we want to be able to hear his perspective and how, in fact, he has dealt with those questions. The question being, what is waking up? What does that mean in this new era of awakening? What is the difference between enlightenment and awakening and new awareness, universal consciousness, so on? These terms here that so many people are throwing around. Well, Colin has his perspective on it, and his personal awakening is what we discussed today, how he's gotten to that awareness and how it's not only helping him, but it's helping lots of others that he is in touch with to living a satisfying life because of that awakening and how he does it. So I hope you enjoy it. We're going to go right into that conversation. So here are the Dr. Eva and Colin and I. Thank you.
Request today, which I would like to.
Great.
Yeah, so I've got about, on Facebook, I put a poem up every other day, one of my poems, and I distribute that to 68 groups. So there's about a million people can read my poem every day.
Beautiful.
It is, yeah. I mean, it's very nice. The internet's an amazing facility for that, actually. I mean, it's just unbelievable, because back in the old day, what would you have done? You'd have met the odd person in the street and had a chat with them, or written the odd letter, so it is an amazing facility. So and then once a week I send out an email. As you probably know, I send out an email to about 500 people. So with that amount of exposure, the amount of feedback I get is very small. So which makes me think, I mean, it's obviously every time I get an email from somebody, and which does happen occasionally, maybe once every 3 or 4 months, actually. So it makes me think that I'm very pleased to get so much exposure, but it makes me think my impact is quite small. However, if you can impact one person to wake up, just one person, then they impact other people, and it just spreads, So so we all keep at it,
I think the more I lean into a spiritual existence, the more I get away from judgments like a lot of people or few people.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I suppose if you have this kind of intention to try and the bodhisattva intention to try and wake up the whole world, it can seem like sometimes you feel a bit like Sisyphus, Sisyphus, the famous
up the hill all the time.
Yeah.
But if your intention is simply to share the knowledge that you have gained in an attempt to help other people, then that removes the judgment of whether it's 1 or 10 or 100 or 1,000,000 or the whole world. And I find that living that way decreases a lot of my anxiety and makes me feel a lot happier and more fulfilled. And, the title of our show is Living a Satisfying Life, not how to wake up and change the planet. That's somebody else's show. Our
Yeah.
show is for each person who's listening to figure out how they can lead their most satisfying life. And I think you have done an excellent job of living your most satisfying life. Is that true?
Oh yeah, I'm completely in favor of that. Yeah, I couldn't imagine actually being happier or being more.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Can
yeah.
you share that with our listeners? Tell us about that.
Well, of course. I mean, once you wake up to your true identity and no longer identify with the separate self, the imaginary separate self, then all of the burdens of the imaginary separate self, they literally they don't completely drop off, but they have no weight anymore. Now, once that happens, you literally feel enlightened. Your whole being is enlightened, because every all that imaginary weight of the past or the future, or even small self-interest, it all actually just lifts, and suddenly it's a bit like walking on air. They've described it as walking.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
the term is good, enlightened, right? Because you're
Yes,
lightening
right.
your load, you're not burdening yourself
Yeah.
with these beliefs that
Yeah.
you're separate, or that you need to accomplish something, or living in judgment.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's an excellent definition about that. The idea that it's about being light. It's just
Yes.
taking
Yes.
the burden off,
Yes.
not having that going on, and just learning how to be light. And
Yes. Yes. Well,
and I think once you learn how to be light, there is no more learning about being light. You just are light. And I find that that's a great. I got to remember that one, Eva. That was an excellent way of.
It's not actually a learning. It's actually not actually a learning. It's more a discovery. Once you discover your true identity, then it just happens by itself. It doesn't require any learning. It just happens, and then you just enjoy the benefits of that, So yeah.
We had a lovely conversation the other day with a woman named Anastasia, who was explaining the difference between understanding and knowing. And I think that's a little bit what you're talking about, that you're using the word discovery. She used the word knowing, like a deep, intuitive knowing, something you discover inside yourself, rather than a learning that someone has taught you, or that you needed to study, or that you found in a book. And I think, Lou, that's what you're talking about. Once you make that discovery, it's hard to slip out of it, and it's easy to stay enlightened or lighter. Once you've made that discovery and you really have that deep knowing of that. But it is hard, I think, for people to have that deep knowing. I don't think many people get to that space where they have that deep knowing. She experienced it through a near-death experience. Yeah. You, I think, from what I know of you and have read, experienced that sort of over years, developing it through a variety of different techniques, right? Through psychedelics, through meditation, through yoga, through study. It wasn't something that you just all of a sudden knew.
I think
that's true, but it's interesting. The difference between knowing and understanding in that is actually completely true. In my years of from psychedelics through to yoga, through up until the day of my awakening, it was all understanding, but there wasn't. There was a lot of experience, but there wasn't any deep knowing, complete knowing, until the day I actually woke up. And the awakening suddenly turned it from understanding into knowing, which was it was quite something, actually. Because, as you say, when you just understand something, it doesn't actually affect your being very deeply. But suddenly, when the deep knowing occurs, then it's a complete radical shift, So yeah, that's true.
Tell us about that transformation for you. How did that occur?
Well, it occurred through meeting Gangaji, actually. Gangaji is, have you heard of Gangaji? Gangaji, that's Gangaji.
Last time, by the way, yes.
Yes, okay. So she's a teacher in the self-inquiry school through Ramana Maharshi. It's come down to a great Indian sage called Ramana Maharshi. And he he taught the method of self-inquiry, where you literally sit and ask the question, who am I? That's the whole basis of his spiritual practice. You ask the question, who am I? And as you can see, I always talk about self-identification, about identification. And that's to do with, you ask, who am I? And then eventually you can discover that you are just this pure awareness in which everything occurs. So when I ran into Gangaji, I had for many years read in the Upanishads and one thing and another that I am the ultimate reality. I am, we are all that absolute reality in essence. I'd read that many times and I'd meditated and done lots of stuff, but I never really knew that. I never discovered that. It was just understanding, intellectual knowing, but it wasn't discovery. Mm-hmm. And Gangaji put it in such a way that it was actually, she made it accessible for me to actually really see it. And then I went on a 7-day silent retreat with her. And on that retreat, I think it was the third evening, I sunk deeply into that, who am I? And actually, when I looked, if you can put the small imaginary self that you think yourself to be, the ego that is, mm-hmm. completely aside and look deeply into the question, who am I? What I discovered was actually nothing. There was no thing there. There's just this radiant awareness. There's the question, right? This I've intellectualized it since, and so this is what I've come to now. But there's the question, who am I? And then there's the radiance by which that question is seen. Then there's the nothingness relative to which the question is seen, and then there's the awareness which sees the question. Because if you look at any perception, I mean, I'm looking at you now, right? My perception of you, okay? There's the light or the radiance by which I can see your image, okay? And then there's the space or the nothingness in which the image occurs. And then there's the awareness of your image within that nothingness, okay? So for me to perceive these three elements are vital. There's the radiance by which the image is lit. There's the nothingness relative to which the image is seen, and there's the awareness that sees the image, okay? That's true of all perception. Do you get that? Hello? Understand that? If you look, okay, look. I was looking at my coffee mug the other day. I'm sitting looking at my coffee mug. Can you see my coffee mug? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, for me to see that coffee mug, to start with, there has to be light or radiance, okay? Otherwise, I wouldn't see it. If it was completely in the dark, I wouldn't see it, okay?
Okay.
That's the first thing. The second thing is, for me to see that coffee mug, there has to be the space in which the coffee mug exists. If that coffee mug was in a solid block of granite, I wouldn't see it, okay? So that's the nothingness, okay? Radiance, nothingness, and then there has to be the awareness which sees that, okay? The awareness by which I see the coffee mug within that space. Do you understand that?
I think where I'm getting tripped up is, since I'm a physician, I'm thinking, well, how do you see that? You see that because some sensory perception comes in through your eyes. It gets processed by your brain.
Yes, you need an
understanding of what a cup is, and therefore you can see a cup.
Yeah, I'm not actually talking about labeling it at the moment. I'm only talking about the actual naked perception of the object.
Okay.
I'm not talking about the labeling it or even knowing what it is. I'm just talking about the naked perception of the object.
Okay.
Now, I understand. I fully agree. You need an instrument to do that too, like the mind body in this case. You need an instrument, but so once you've got the instrument, to have naked perception of anything, that there are three vital things. I just said there's the radiance that illuminates it, there's the nothingness in which it appears, and then there's the awareness that sees it, using the instrument, in this case the mind body. Okay. Mm-hmm. So when I ask who am I, okay, putting the small self completely aside, because by then I got to the stage where my meditation could bring me to a still state of mind. Okay. When I asked who am I, there was the question, who am I? Mm-hmm. Then there was the radiance which illuminated the question so it could be seen. Mm-hmm. And there was nothingness in which in which it, relative to which it was seen, and there was the awareness which saw it. Okay, so the question, who am I, would just produce this radiant aware nothingness. That's all there was. There was no separate self. There was no mind body. It was just this radiant aware nothingness. And when I actually saw that, when I actually saw that deeply, that produced the knowing we're talking about, and the change from intellectual knowledge to knowing. You with me?
There was this distinction even the other day that we spoke about, of conscious awareness, that the conscious awareness that who you are. Anastasia called it a soul, and it is the way that I personally look at it, from listening to a lot of science that's out there also, is this unknowing field of energy, because they haven't yet really, but they take it down to the Planck level, very, very small level, but there's a field of energy that surrounds us, that and some people identify it as a soul, some people identify it as conscious awareness, and it is getting to that point, understanding that who you really are is that that connection, that conscious awareness that is personalized only because you're in a human experience, but otherwise it is in this part of this field of total consciousness that has everything that is possible being able to be manifested through our personal conscious awareness and experience. And getting to that point of knowing that that's who you really are means that you have to give up the baggage of who you think you are. You got to stop thinking of who you are.
That's right. Yeah. So when if you ask the question, who am I, and you can deeply ask that question and discover just pure consciousness, this radiant aware nothingness. Once you've really seen that, and that you realize that that's who you actually are, then all that baggage vanishes, or is of no weight. You're enlightened, because that is no longer of any weight. You no longer identify as being a separate individual being. You're just you're an expression, an instrument of that field of consciousness. That's what you are, but you're not separate from that.
Yeah,
ever.
I have that sense of occasionally where this intuitive experience occurs out of nothing. This intuitive experience occurs that you think all of a sudden you've discovered brilliance because you've understood something became so real, so absolute, and it's this intuitive feeling, and so it's when that happens. Without question. So
this,
so the idea of getting close to that awareness, which is an ongoing intuitiveness, it just is the way Anastasia spoke about the other day. She is so clear about her being, and not to say that we don't have questions about some of the positions that she might have, but her clarity is who she is today, how she lives her life, what makes her move and have experience. And that's the word that I think I hear a lot over here between us today, which is optimal. It's not the knowing, it's not even the awareness, it's the experience. That when you have an experience, it's where truth lies. There's no lying about an experience. When you have an experience, it's an experience. It's real. It's sensory. And
I agree. This is why, I mean, with my method of actually inquiring into, that the method I took you through in the previous talk we had, going through the steps of starting off. For me, when I go through this investigative experience, it's like I see it anew every time. Every time I go through it, I see anew that there is only pure awareness, and that's what I am. Now, that's an intuitive experience, and that's why I say that, and I myself go through this at least 2 or 3 times a day. I go through this whole investigation, so that I can and every time I see it, it's like a new revelation, actually. But it's obviously not, in that I've seen it many times before. But as you know, our conditioning and our yes, our conditioning, that's the word for it, and our misidentification tends to come in and swamp it. So you have to continually reinvestigate. You have to continually rediscover who you are, and so to. And by that, you get to the stage where you can live by and from that. But it's a continual rediscovery. It's not just discover it once and you're done, you know. For some people, I have heard there are people who that's the case. And I mean, I honestly don't believe that in my own day-to-day existence, I misidentify very much these days, but I still do occasionally. And I still really enjoy the investigative experiences that I have every day. And it's not only
you do that through a meditative process.
Yeah. You know, that investigation I took you through in the previous interview,
yes.
That step-by-step investigation.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I do that twice a day, and I with each step, I stay in that step until I really see it, and then I move on to the next step. So it's not just by rote, you know. I've like, the first step is in this moment of experience, there are only 3 elements. There's thoughts, all mind stuff. There's sense impressions, and there's the awareness of these. Now that's the first step, and then I mull on that until I really see it, and then I move on to the next step. Within that, thoughts and sensations are just a flow of objects, while the awareness is a constant presence. So I stop there until I really see that. I can see that's actually the case. And you can see it's the case actually because you can see the thoughts going through and the awareness of them, actually. You can see it.
Perfectly.
Okay. You're talking about people being identified with their thoughts, and most people are, of course. Most people actually identify with the mind. They think they are the mind, actually. Oh, no, what's happening?
Yeah.
Sorry, I've got... And sorry, I've got something coming up. Oh, that's right. I've got rid of it. Yeah. And of course, actually, Western psychology and Western psychiatry is basically based on thinking that people are their minds. I mean, would you say that's true, Eva?
I would say yes. But also I think there's a growing awareness that the mind and body are not separate and that they influence each other.
Yes, that's
For
true.
example,
But
it's pain from an accident is going to affect their mind and their thoughts. Somebody whose GI tract is not working well, it's going to affect the nutrients in their body, which is going to affect their mind. So I think there's a growing understanding that they're not separate.
That's true, but yeah.
There's a connection. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but they still like, it's still based on the fact that we are the mind body, isn't it? It's based on that identification.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so
that is
what I'm pointing to is beyond that, of course, that we're not mind body.
No, I got it. And that's what I said. I said the introduction to those people that have the opportunity of stepping outside of that way of thinking is maybe looked at as radical, but there's a lot of people out there that are coming to that awareness that there's more than the mind-body relationship to the self that is, you know, beyond the mind-body, and
yes,
it is that stillness, that quietness, that even plainness, that way of being that is not at effect of the mind chatter or the body upset or the illness. It is that state of being that many gurus are out there that, you know, that have gotten to that place. And I think that we're going in that.
That's true. So that's what my whole investigative process is deals with. I mean, that's the whole thing. The very first step, when just to realize that actually in this moment there are just thoughts, sensations, and the awareness of those. I mean, that's pretty fundamental. And most people, if you talk to them, they can see that that's the case. Okay, I mean, that is obviously the case in this moment for each of us. There's mind stuff, there's sense impressions, there's the awareness of those. That's all there is, nothing else. Now, if once you can see that step, and then it's fairly obvious that the mind stuff and the sense impressions are just a flow of objects that are ever changing. I mean, that's undeniable. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, those two steps are very simple. So the third step is, well, okay, there's the awareness of those. Now, the awareness is constant. That doesn't change. That's always there. I mean, that's pretty undeniable also, I would say, wouldn't you say?
Except I think we had this conversation last time. When you go to sleep, you have a different awareness of yourself.
Yes, but as I said last time, that's just the mind seeing something. You were talking about, that's the small instance of awareness, the mind seeing something. But the overall awareness in which your thoughts and sensations, and in when you're asleep, your dreams occur, that's still there. It's just that the mind's asleep. When the mind wakes up, then that small instance of awareness, which is the mind, can then look at the overall big picture. It can see things. But when in normal everyday experience, as I say, it's pretty obvious that the thoughts and sensations are just this flow of objects, and it's always changing, and the awareness is constant. Now, it then comes down to deciding whether you are a flow of objects or whether you are that which is always here, you know. And I mean, we would all say that we've been here since we were born, wouldn't we all say that? We'd all agree that we've been here since we were born. Now, I mean, this is a matter of just looking at each step and actually analyzing it and logically coming to the conclusion, you know, I've been here since I was born. What's the only thing that's been here since I was born? There's only awareness. The rest of it is just a flow of objects. Now, then you actually have to make the decision. You have to make the decision to decide to try identifying with the awareness rather than the flow of objects and see where that takes you. And then you can go step by step, analyzing awareness itself. You know, you end up with this sublime place of radiant aware nothingness just by analyzing it. And each step is just a logical step from the previous one. It doesn't require any belief systems. It doesn't require any faith. It just requires you to look at it and just see it. I mean, I went through the whole process before, you know.
Okay, so there it is. Thank you so much for stopping by. That was Colin Drake and Dr. Eva Ritvo, who made a wonderful interview in bringing the best out in both Colin and myself. And I hope to see you again soon. Please, if you like, share the video and help us reach as many people as possible to this idea that living a satisfying life is all about kindness, caring, and gratitude. Thank you.